Hi, friends. Rosanne Callens here. Today's conversation is so special to me because it's not just about someone's career journey, it's about connection, community, and full circle moments. I met today's guest back in 2012 in Lajes, Azores. And if you don't know where that is, it's right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And we were both military spouses working at what is now called the Military and Family Readiness Center, supporting others, building community, and navigating life in such a unique place. Jess has built an incredible career in finance, leadership, and most importantly, I would say relationship building. Jess helps people navigate big decisions and move forward in meaningful ways. But more than that, one of my favorite things about Jess is that he's someone who genuinely cares about people. He shows up with humor, heart, and honesty. And whenever I need a laugh, I know where to go to. So Jess, I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Rosanne. It's great to be here. And wow, what such high praise, such high praise. But you're fantastic at that, and that's part of what I think we work well off of each other or with each other. It's just your energy is contagious, and the way you make people feel is just remarkable to watch you work.
I take that. Thank you so much. I met Jess at a really, really challenging time in my life, and my stress level, I think on a scale of 1 to 10 was probably a 12. And every time I saw Jess, he just made that stress level go down. He made everything feel doable. And I can't wait for you guys to listen to our conversation because I'm sure he's going to make you smile too. So Jess, for anyone who doesn't know you yet, who is Jess Humphreys and what does your life look like right now?
Thank you. Great question. So I've thought about this for a while, and I thought that first and foremost, I'm a Christian and I'm a family man, because when I look at any action I take, any decision I make, the two foundations that those are all rooted in are my faith and my family, which thankfully, going through some of these topics, have both been incredible foundations for me to lean on. I love being a dad. Right now I have an incredible girlfriend. My parents are still alive, so I'm a son, I'm a brother. But I would say leading all of those is being a dad, being a father. Currently, I'm an account executive in the mortgage world, so I'm continually talking to people, and it is all about icebreakers, which is part of the humor tool, because you're trying to open doors. One thing that I guess is a common denominator amongst everyone is humor and laughter.
Humor really connects us. It's so powerful. It really is a universal language, right?
Sure.
So, Jess, you grew up in South Dakota, and I know we used to talk about this because I used to be stationed up in North Dakota. For people who have never been there and don't know that world, what did growing up in South Dakota give you? How did that shape who you are today?
So first, it was always funny when people, where are you from? South Dakota. Oh, the Dakotas. No, not the Dakotas. They are clearly two separate states. And, so then I started to get kind of cocky, and people would be like, where are you from? And I'd say Sioux Falls, because, people from Chicago could say Chicago, people from Denver, so I was like, I'm just going to flex and say Sioux Falls. But, it's the little house on the prairie land. So it is flat, it is agriculture, but it is beautiful. Blue skies, green grass, clear fresh water. Sioux Falls is actually, the Sioux River flows, it makes a little bit of an elbow, and it flows north for a bit. And Sioux Falls is kind of a peninsula within that elbow. And so we're surrounded by that river and just seeing it. But then I've also found the strength of coming from a small town and the Midwest, that very community-minded, very neighborly. And perhaps part of it is the severe winters, and that we're all in this together kind of mentality. With that intimacy, with that size, there's definitely a heightened accountability and requirement to be neighborly, to be a better person, because you can't really mess around. I don't know, I'd say it's paid dividends just in my approach to life and everywhere I've lived, and trying to, instead of shrinking to fit, I've tried to grow my surroundings to improve to that mindset. But
Yeah, there's a lot of intentionality that I hear you saying, and also community. And I would agree that water is just so wonderful to be around. It helps, it's the flow of life, which I think that's very much you as well. And when we were stationed in the Azores, we had water all around us. I used to tell people, you can't get lost on this island. Just keep the water on your right and you'll eventually get back to the base, right?
yeah.
People were so worried about getting lost. It's really funny. So, Jess, you are really just one of the funniest people I know. Where did that come from? Was humor always a part of how you move through the world? I think that's just important to talk about. Sometimes people just say, "Oh, well, I'm not naturally funny," or whatever. But I always disagree with that. I think we all have things that make us chuckle or make us kind of do that. Tell me a little bit about where humor came from with you.
Yes, we'll have to come back to a part about how humor gets me in trouble as well. I have like honestly probably one of the most after school special ABC childhoods ever. Like so blessed. Dad had a steady job. He was a firefighter, so for 31 years we had meals, we ate supper as a family at the table. My mom has really strong like maternal instincts in the size of her family. And I was thinking about her humor versus my dad's humor. So my dad was more of a storyteller, and he'd sit there and hold court. We'd just be like in stitches and just, enthralled by his stories. My mom had more situational humor and watching her interact and so forth, because dad was more about the task and the job. And then when the work was done, then he'd tell stories and be funny. Mom was more like an operational funny person. Well, then when my brother, who is probably my humor role model, when he came of age, because he's 9 years older than me, he totally held court. And so watching that power, because I'm the youngest of four kids, and watching that power he had to have my dad crying at the table. My sister couldn't breathe because they'd be laughing so hard. And talk about a guy that knows how to like embellish a story. That's my brother. So watching that and seeing that power, right? Not only the power, but just the my dad's a strong guy. He grew up a farmer and then he was a firefighter, but he worked his whole life. And so to see him soften, like just to see what power that was, but then also the release, like the medicine of it all and how good you feel, because it is, the endorphins and everything that happens when you're just laughing your guts out. I mean, it's comedy is $1 billion industry, right? So, and it is because people feel good when they laugh. Like my girlfriend is very intellectual, and she's a high school counselor, and she's a total professional. She's like an actual excellent counselor, and so she will say things that we'll be having a serious conversation, and I just lose it because what she says is so hilarious, but it's not intentional. She's not trying to be funny, but like we were talking the other day about it's registration time for the next school year, and she was talking about how the kids that are taking welding are not going to take pre-calc. I lost it, Roseanne. I could, and she's, she starts to get a little flustered because the timing is bad, and it's just like, don't get mad. I'm like, I'm not laughing at you, but like the way you said it, and just I'm like, that needs to be a sticker for water bottles. That needs to be a T-shirt. Like seriously. And she's like, okay, whatever. Back to my what I was talking about. But it's so magical. Dylan, my son, Harper was my daughter. She was getting frustrated with something, and instead of getting frustrated and then like nipping at each other, he says, "Well, hello, Lorax. Do you speak for all the trees?" And just like totally
The Lorax
the movie. Yeah, I'm like, what? Because we don't watch that movie often, but it was somewhere up in his gray matter, and right when he needed it, boom, there it was. And I was like, oh, and the Harper, she couldn't be mad either because his timing, the placement, everything was like perfection. And so that was pretty awesome too. I'm thrilled that sense of humor and the power of humor and laughter has passed on to them, and they see the value of it. And I mean, taking them to school when we had to, because of their ages, and they were at two different schools, but they had to carpool, which meant one had to get up a little earlier than they would if they took the bus or what have you. So we're driving, and they're kind of grumpy, and I don't do well in grumpy. I don't do well in stale air, stagnant anything, and silence kills me. So I'm trying to get everybody to cheer up, and they're like, rah, rah, shish, boom, bah. And so I start telling this funny story. It's totally made up, other than the fact that I did fly on an airplane. But I had them in I had them in stitches. And so then I just keep embellishing it and rolling. So now this is what I've learned from my brother. And so I used to really stick to the facts of my stories to try to be funny, and it didn't really work as well, and I saw what he did. So this one I just like let loose. As a little brother and accountability, I'd be like, that didn't happen. Like, that's not
Yeah.
true. And he's like, shush, shush, go away. You're ruining the moment. So it was about like a week later, maybe a week and a half later, and same energy in the car or whatever. And I'm like, you guys want to listen to the radio? And they're like, tell us that story again. And I couldn't, because I'd made up like 90% of it. And I was like, oh, I'd love to, but that's gone, right? Like, not, yeah, it was just the magic of the moment, but there's no tape recorder. I wasn't writing it down, and it's not a true story.
Can you think of a time for you where humor genuinely helped you navigate something that could have, I don't like really saying broken you, but, just really set you back or knocked you down for longer? Does anything come to mind?
So I don't know I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that question, because I thought long and hard about it, and I don't know if I've ever consciously made that decision versus reading the moment, or if it's just something that happens. I know for sure, like when there've been a couple of really rough spots, I went and sat in a church by myself. It wasn't during mass or anything like that. I just went and sat in the quiet and stillness of it, just to be somewhere other than like at home, because I was home by myself and I didn't want to be like alone with my thoughts, and just that just all the questions that were racing through my head. And so I went somewhere where I felt comfortable and I felt like a member of something bigger than myself. And then once I kind of felt better, was just like, thought about how insignificant we really all are. How we're all just, some of those quotes on Instagram or whatever, like we're all just specks of or a collection of atoms that form a body that are on this rock that's hurtling through the universe at this many miles an hour. How like really silly it is to get upset and so forth. And then the humor is the medicine that brings me back. It's the thing that like settles me and resets to where I can move forward. So it's because there's times where like appropriateness or inappropriateness, like we were in the basement of my friend's house. His mom had passed away, and all the adults were probably like 21 or so, just a couple years out of high school, but it all got back together for the first time because she was the first parent that had passed away, and a real professional, like kind of a straight-laced family, let me put it that way. So all the adults were upstairs and we were just downstairs, and we just kind of started, because my friends are the same way. Like the number of us, one friend has, I think, like 13 nicknames, right? So just that humor. But we kind of, for a minute, we kind of looked at each other like, is this appropriate? Because we were down there just busting a gut, because we were reconnecting. We were helping our friend back, like through the fact that his mom had passed away. And part of that was just like reliving stories and laughing and so forth. But like, there was like a quiet moment. It wasn't like a 7 minute, because we were on a roll for a while, but listening to the energy upstairs and how mismatched was like, are we going to get in trouble because we're down here like busting a gut? And, like, but it was the medicine. It was the medicine we knew how to use to help Mike. It was the medicine Mike needed. So it's definitely that. And, even like when I reached out to you at some tough times, and my situation well, but part of like what helped us just deal with it was we got each other laughing on the phone as well. So it's, yeah. And so it's just so helpful.
A time that humor genuinely helped me navigate something that did really feel like it set me back. I feel like I couldn't breathe was when my dad died. I was overseas in England, and I had to get on the plane and fly back to California. And I just remember wanting to speak at his service that we were having, and I just felt like I couldn't. And all of a sudden it came to me. I feel that I'm naturally jovial and somewhat funny in my workshops, but when it's your own personal life and you have something like that, it just doesn't naturally come, I guess. And so all of a sudden I thought, wait a minute, I'm going to get three things that make me think of my dad: electrical tape, a Stanley thermos, and a map. And I was able to tell the most hilarious stories, mostly of my dad yelling at me with these three things. But I should have got the purple paint that goes around the PVC pipes from all the sprinklers I ran over mowing the lawn when I was a little girl. But I didn't have time, to think like that. But it made everyone laugh there thinking about my dad. And it made me feel so proud that I was able to honor him. Advice I give to someone who's lost someone special to them and they have an opportunity to speak at their service, I always try to help them so much to say you would really be proud of yourself for saying something. And it's a way to honor their memory. But it's okay if you can't, because not everyone can. But humor did get me through it, Jess, and I love that you helped your friend. But what about when someone feels like they're not allowed to be funny? Do you think that people have to be serious to be taken seriously, Jess? Like what are your thoughts on that? Because I know I have some people listening that are thinking like, well, I'm just not, naturally like that.
Well, first of all, let's go back a little bit, because there's two people listening. That there's a group of people that know you and a group of people that don't. And the people that know you, that just heard you say that you're not naturally funny, are like rolling their eyes out of their head, because you are hilarious. Your timing, your like the way you kind of apologize, like, okay, we're going to go up to the top of the rock and the spaghetti's amazing, and we're all go like, okay, Rosanne says it because we love her and believe her. And then you get up there and like, I think it took me 6 months to realize that you were just being a professional and celebrating what was available, but that the spaghetti may not have really been so amazing, or it may have tasted a bit like taco meat. Anyway, but it's I think they just need to relax and allow themselves to be. Try and read the room, because there are times when it's not appropriate. Some of the humor like a lesson I kind of learned the hard way, was to not be self-depreciating to the point where people don't respect you. Like if you need to break the ice, maybe keep it at one or two, if you have to even do that, because if you establish that that's maybe your value or your worth, or that's how you'll be treated, like, because I've seen it where if I'm not the facilitator, but I still break the ice and I did something that was self-depreciating, then I became like the butt of the joke. Like I was used to help work the room, which then it wasn't really funny anymore. And then it was like, okay, now my value is shrinking, and it's like, that's not cool. But if it helps recover, there have been times where like my go-to and the kids will challenge me like, you shouldn't be laughing. I'm like, when I'm uncomfortable, I laugh. Like it's just where I go.
As much as I love hanging around with people, they light me up, like everything we're talking about. But there are a group of people that I don't appreciate personally. My personal opinion is I don't like the humor where people make fun of others. I don't like hanging around people like that, because inevitably you start to think, wait a minute, are they talking about me? When they say, oh, I'm just kidding. And are you really just kidding? And that kind of humor I'm not a big fan of, but I would say you and I have G and PG humor. Maybe sometimes are, depending on the situation. But
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part, we're pretty chill.
You're right, because it's humor should never be permission to be mean. And it's like, I think a person who, if you've watched Disney's Tangled, Mother Gothel there's a piece in there where she kind of puts on a master class at just being a backstabbing, like everything she says to Rapunzel is so hamstringing, but then she apologizes and like, so that's definitely off. Yeah, that's not acceptable.
The reason why I'm leaning so hard into this humor is because people see Jess and they see me and they think, oh, it's so easy. It's so easy for Jess to roll with the punches, and it's so easy for Rosanne, and that's not true. It's not easy for us. I'm kind of skipping a little bit ahead of here, but like when a plan falls apart, or just like our life comes off the rails, and believe me, everyone, when we were military spouses, it comes off the rails, right? It's like you can't control what the government's telling you to do, and then even outside of that life, same thing. You can't control life. So what's that process? How do you regroup without spiraling. I would just like your perspective, Jess. Like, how do you regroup?
We were at Disney World, and there was a guy wearing a T-shirt from, like, I thought it was from Goof Troop, from like the Goofy TV show and so forth. And I went to compliment him. And we're at Disney World, the happiest place on earth. And I was like, hey, that's good to see some old school, you're repping some old school Goofy stuff. I don't see a lot of that. It's all the princesses and this and that. And he goes, it's not Goof Troop. This is Livewire. Or I think that's the character's name. And so I'm like, oh, sorry. And it goes for a bit. But anyway, so it turns out that this character was a rock and roll star that was the hero of Goofy's son. And so he had like a very limited run, very limited role, and it was only ever in a movie, et cetera, et cetera. But this guy, that was his jam, and I guess I just totally insulted him. And I was like, oh, well, thanks. I mean, you kind of sent me to school there. And then I guess the way I said that, I felt I may have sounded too hurt or corrected or whatever, because he's like, well, it's not like that. And I was like, well, it kind of was, like, I didn't say it, but I was like, dude, yeah, I'm just trying to compliment your shirt. But he was like so offended that I didn't know who Livewire was. But anyway, I say that because my kids have seen me, and I think it was my daughter was like, how are you so confident? And it's like, I don't know that I'm confident. I just love people, and I believe in the good in people. And be it the checkout line at the grocery store, or someone's wearing something goofy, and you give them attention, you give them validation, you give them time. And something I learned from one of my best friends is, if you ask people questions, people love to talk about themselves. And so it's just like, it's that faith, and having been around for a while, that I believe in it. So I thought I used that. I talked to them. I brought it back to my kids. I was like, remember you said that, like, how are you so confident? Like, it is a gamble. I said, and I gave that as an example. Like, sometimes you fall on your face, and there's no ill intent. And there was no ill intent on his part either, but it didn't land at all, and it wasn't a fun interaction. And I think I literally like stepped backwards from, like, I think I'll just go now. I can't explain it, Rosanne. I don't know where it comes from. Like, when we were in Tokyo, and there was the four of us, and we lost, our son got sidetracked from us, I was calm as a cucumber. I can't explain why or how, but in thinking back and then trying to understand it, maybe it was because the best thing I could be for my family was to be a rock at that moment, to not show the nervousness, to not have any calamity, and just be like, okay, this is what he's wearing. Thankfully, we're in the safest, if you're going to lose a kid in a crowd, yeah, that's the place to do it. Plus, you've got a blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid in Japan. It's going to be easy to locate him, but then just to be like, okay, that's where he was. Here's what we're going to do. Yeah. And, but just know that the recovery is waiting for you. Know that the humor is in your pocket or in your tool belt, that it's there for you. And then you just, you need to check.
Right.
There was definitely no jokes being made at that time, right? Like, it wasn't about humor then. It was, and it's still not something we're able to joke about now, surprisingly, even though it was over like 9 or 10 years ago. Like, my daughter still doesn't want to talk about it.
Once again, I think when people do use humor, they don't read the room, or they don't see how it's affecting someone. Speaking of people, I just want to go back to what you said. Jess said, I wrote it down, I'm not fancy enough to pull this out in a text clip. I'm not confident. I just love people. And I would say that is the secret. People want to feel seen. Even when we're in the Dutch Brothers line, I don't know if you have Dutch Brothers in Georgia, but the kids love Dutch Brothers. Here are these kids that are out in the rain or the hot sun taking your order. And when they say, hi, how are you today? Just even saying, hey, how are you doing? Or, I love your earrings. Or they're always wearing clips. They're always wearing something. Right. And then they're always taken aback. You're like, oh, thank you. Right? Just loving people and just understanding everyone is here being the best they can. Yes, there are bad people, but for the most part, I feel people want to be seen, and you do a wonderful job of doing that. Is there something else that comes to mind about something that life just really threw at you and what it taught you about yourself? I mean, I think you really kind of went into it, even with losing Dylan. That was a really big thing.
Being a parent, and now a single parent, I truly believe in family, in relationships, in healthy, even though it's not a pretty part of the family. It's kind of the ugly side of family. I mean, I'm guilty of it as well from when I was a little brother, like when I was younger. And my sister, who's one of my absolute best friends now, we fought like cats and dogs. And so being that person in your kids' lives that there's no parade or recognition, the way they talk about you when you're not around, and then when you are around, sometimes how hard they push on you, because they know people tend to push the hardest where the bond is the strongest. I will always be their dad. They'll always be siblings, and I try and coach them out of it. It's like, look, you'll never not be her brother, and you'll never not be his sister, but you shouldn't be ugly like that, because you should be building each other up and lifting each other up. And so to know that sometimes you're the kicking post or the claw, the scratching post or whatever for your kids, because when you get them to unpack and unzip that ugliness of what they experienced during the day, because at first you're kind of like, whoa, check your attitude there, Skipper, and only to find out like what's really on their heart, and then to help them and sit there in the moment with them. And again, like, that's reading the room. It's not at the right time to be funny, but you're kind of like taking snippets of what they said. I've literally had to bite my lip to not laugh, because A, I'm uncomfortable. B, when you're 50 and you've been through life and you've been through some different things, and it's the truth. Like, hey, new parents, their emotions are 100% valid, because they're big emotions. It's their reality. And you trade spots with them in a minute, and they think they want to trade spots with you in a heartbeat, but that's not, it's not the case. But then to know what's on the other side of it. We're going to get through this. I'm going to let this off of their heart. It's really ugly. The way they're speaking to me is ugly, but it's not. It's like I'm the dummy, and they're just getting the anger or the frustration out against the dummy. And so I guess in a way able to separate that, because I know they love me. They know I love them. But it gets ugly sometimes. And then when you hear, the way kids talk to each other, and the way some of the things they talk about is almost like a catchphrase with the way they speak to each other. I might have.
We need to do a whole separate podcast
so
about
common.
that.
And so
And I think that's very different as a parent, and that's hard. What I hear you saying is what it taught you about yourself is just being self-aware enough to know that it's not all about you, right? You're there for your kids. I do think that people forget that our children, even our high schoolers, that's their entire world. We're thinking about rent. I'm thinking about my flight.
Right.
I'm thinking about a million things. And it doesn't mean that kids aren't thinking about a million things, but their whole world is school and their social group. And, it's very limited, which means it's everything. It's everything. And so I think that's beautiful that you shared that. And it's perfect going into a question I have about being a single dad. But one thing I do want to share before this, because when you were answering that question, it made me think about, when we learn lessons about ourselves, we have this tape. I use tape because, I'm Gen X, right? But we have this tape in our mind of who we are and how we power through things. And I was going through such a hard time in my life, years back. And when I tell this story in a workshop, I said to them, okay, I needed to get a new job. I was moving around, across the world. And this lady said, oh, Rosanne, you'd be so great for this job. I'm going to connect you with so-and-so. And sure enough, she wrote me an email. She wrote an email to the lady. She CC'd me on it. And she said, Rosanne would be so great. And I say to everyone, what do you guys think I did? And they're like, you messaged her on LinkedIn, you connected, you called her, because I teach people, we got to reach out. I say, no, I froze. I was so overwhelmed in my life that I froze. And here I am, someone who actively says, ask our friends for help. Ask the people who love you for help. Or our kids, when we say to our kids, ask me for help to let me know you're struggling. But sometimes when you're going through it, you just don't see it. And I tell people, no, I didn't do anything. And literally people will go, oh, what happened next? And so people will have to stay tuned to know what happens next. I'll have to do that in another clip sometime. But we react in different ways when we're in a situation that is just completely foreign to us because of all those other layers on it. And so being a single dad, that brings all sorts of new layers. And I talk to so many dads, Jess, like honestly, I really feel that it's a population that is underserved because they really struggle with being vulnerable. Bravery, which does not roll off the tongue, but to be brave enough to say, hey, this is really hard. What do you want people to understand just from your perspective about being a single dad? What's it like? What was something that, that was a definite change for you as a single dad that you were able to get through?
I spent so much time being a stay-at-home dad too, that knowing these kids so well. And so then when I became a single dad, I knew who they were. I knew how they operated. The thing that's changed now from when they were little kids to being 13 and 17 is those one-size-fits-all tricks don't work. One's going in one direction, one's going in the other, and so there's more intention required, there's more management required. Being strong enough to be vulnerable, being confident enough to know, like, I forget how they say it, if it's the impeccable truth and the form agreements. And so I've taught them, like, if all you ever tell is the truth, you don't have to remember anything. You don't have to memorize a story or anything because you've told the truth and that's all there is. And so in being honest with the kids, and there's some things I've said that have been both like not their level or not appropriate because my son will get into the locker room mentality sometimes that I'll be like, I can't go there with you. Like, I love you, buddy, but I'm still your dad. And the same with my daughter, the same where it's like, we can't go there and just it's not appropriate. I'm happy to answer any question, like clinical, so but to be safe and confident in that as well, because they need you. You are everything. Now you're the mom and the dad in your home. Like Mondays when they leave, sometimes I'm exhausted because I've gone from making all the decisions, like all for myself. Like I know what I want to eat. And it's funny too. It's like, what are you guys hungry for? Oh, we don't care. And it's like, guys, I can eat anywhere I want. When I'm by myself, where's somewhere you would like to go? Because I'm happy taking you where you would like to go. But sometimes when I cook, one kid is just like smashing it and you feel like a chef, and then the other kid is like, their nose is totally turned up. One of the things I don't want to happen, and so this will be for divorced mom and dads, if it's not a healthy relationship afterwards, you don't want your kids to lose their whole life that happened prior to the divorce. And so to watch the kids glow, like you see them just like their posture changes and they brighten up so much when you talk about things that they may have forgotten about, things that happened when, air quotes, when they say, everything was perfect. That's still 100% their life, that part of their formative years and everything. And so to let them know that still happened, it was still 100% meaningful, and to let them know that it's okay to talk about those things. It doesn't mean that you wish it was this or you wish it was that. That happened. That was life.
Yeah.
Like let's relive those moments. So this, I don't want to get all old fogey, but this digital age with our phones and everything. Rosanne, when I was little, my parents would go to Kmart, print pictures out every once in a while, and those albums were a treasure trove of memories, and just looking through them and, oh, remember this, remember that. And unless you're a super awesome parent that has like the Shutterfly or whatever the current method is, to give those kids back their childhood and let them live that and see that, and see, like, we had dinner with a friend, and we'd gone up to Atlanta to see her son play basketball. So I found those pictures on my phone, and I was like, oh my gosh, Harper, look how much you've grown since then. And she's like, that's me? Look at my eyebrows, and everything. But it is. And she studied that picture on my phone for a hot minute because they're not used to seeing themselves. Everything is so here and now and immediate. And it's just wild to see how different their life is. And, you are an amazing mentor and friend and so forth, but you've also helped me, and you instruct your people about this too. your lens is your lens, but that's not the only lens. And so that's helped me understand that how I see things, and this is going back to the big emotions and new parents, their childhood, their school is not like, I can't measure it against what mine was. But even though that's my paradigm, that's my lens, and they'll be like, Dad, things are different now. And I'll be like, and that's where I give the power back to them.
Right.
Get on their level, like, Roseanne, you're 100% right. I hear you, and that does suck. And yes, it is different than, like, so sometimes my cures or my fixes won't work because they're antiquated now. And so thank you for bringing me back into the reality that this is, your story and your experience.
I think people struggle with what to get teenagers and high schoolers, and I'll just bring up the holidays or the birthday or whatever. And I just want to say that I struggle with it as well, because I love to really think about a person and, gifts from the heart. If you read the 5 love languages, I love thinking about gifts for people. And anyway, one thing that I found very interesting, I've got 3 nephews and I've got my kids, and I have a lot of teenagers around, the ages of 6th grade and up, right? And something I've done every year that I get the best feedback from is I have them text me their favorite memories of the year, their favorite photos. And then what I do, everyone, so you could do this on Walgreens. There's always a coupon code. I'm not a marketer for Walgreens, but anyway, I will print out their photos and I'll put them in frames. I'll do like a collage frame. And even my nephew, who's in college right now, just sent me a message today. He was like, Aunt Rosie, and he literally in this voice message talked about every single picture that was in the collage. Because kids, you're right, all of their photos and memories and everything are living in this digital world. And to put something in print again for them to see. And that's why I let them choose the memory too, because just like Jess said, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, this is my favorite. And the girls are like, Mom, this is the worst picture ever, right? And so I let them choose what the memory means to them. But I have found great luck in that. And I love seeing their excitement of seeing that. Because like Jess said, we don't do the scrapbooks and stuff as much anymore. And I know we're way off time. I knew this was going to happen because Jess and I love to talk, but I do want to, I go ahead, Jess, go ahead. What did you want to say?
Well, no, I was just gonna, because I kind of know what your closing question was, so I was just gonna segue into that of just just know who you are, because everything that's going on, if you're having a bad day, if you're having a bad moment, or if you're having a major, like if it's the loss of a loved one, or if it's the end of a relationship, or some difficult time, everything is so much bigger than we are, and it'll all work out. And I say that as with appreciation for people who like, well, that's easy for you to say. You've known Roseanne for 13 years now. You still are friends with people from high school, or your parents are still alive, which I'm totally thankful for. But even without that, like maybe it's just you find something like a photo album or pictures. Just take a moment, breathe, and there's this thing where people are like, they're sassing each other where they say, touch grass, but do it. Go outside, walk in the grass barefoot. Just like remember how huge this place is, and that we aren't alone. Like you can see just the energy sitting in the parking lot of the grocery store before you go in or before you leave. Just sit there for a minute and watch people, and you can see the people that are suffering alongside you quietly, personally, but you can see that they're not happy. And then you see other people that are, footloose and fancy free, and everybody's just at a different point. But it's so much. It's just a big, beautiful world, and we're all literally, we're all in it together. So just breathe.
Breathing is underrated. We just need to breathe. And sometimes we need to laugh so hard that we can barely breathe. And I want to close on this. Now, Jess and I have a ton of funny memories. But one thing I've told you, I've said to my listeners and just on social media clips, is that when I get overwhelmed and stressed, I lose one of my highest values, which is clear communication. I love communicating. And so one of the stories that I like to share that has just seared into my heart with Jess and Missy Schmidt, if she's listening, is that I was so stressed. We had a lot of distinguished visitors happening. We had so much going on at work, and I wasn't able to articulate to one of our newer people on board how to make the coffee. And the coffee, everyone, was the big thing. Like they were like, you got to have coffee for the visitors. You got to have coffee. And so I just let that train ride. I was like, okay, make the coffee, blah, 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 blah. Next thing I know, Jess, you want to tell the part of the story?
Well, I know that I believe there was no filter used. There were grounds and there were
grounds.
water.
Someone had put like 20 scoops of coffee in the little Mr. Coffee maker. And just everyone, just so you know, that would have really rocked my world. Cause I was like dressed up. I was giving these, briefings is what they call it in the military world. But anyway, and instead of me completely being upset with myself for not communicating right, not showing someone how to make the coffee and all the things that I normally pride myself on, Jess just made it into the funniest thing. I mean, he was like literally a stand-up comedian in the kitchen. And I was laughing so hard. I even had abs, everyone. Like, I don't even have abs. And my stomach hurt the next day. And still to this day, Dustin, Missy, and I will send each other a funny meme about the coffee.
Yeah, no, you're right. It was a very intense moment, and it was something that we all learned, like what you take for granted, and that you thought everybody knew this, steps 1 through 4 to make coffee. But then you were gracious enough or smart enough to let go of it, and to let me to give it away and be like, don't worry about it, Rosanne, because you're, what you needed to do and what only you can do the way you do it was in that conference room up by the whiteboard, and your little dancey moves and the way you include everybody.
What stands out to me always is just the way you move through life with humor, and you have such a genuine love for life, even when things were hard. And I know you give so much credit to your growing up years, but I'm going to give credit to you being an amazing man here on this earth, an amazing father, to start back from where you started in this podcast about you being a father. And I think you are an amazing one. That's who you are. And you show up, you keep going, and you still find a way to laugh along the way. And I think that's just, once again, something people needed to hear today. So Jess, thank you for being here in this conversation, for letting me be a little bit late on our podcast and sharing it with all of us. Thank you, Jess.
Thank you, Rosanne. What a privilege, and I appreciate the opportunity just to take a couple of trips down memory lane, and then just to share and self-explore. I mean, you're doing an amazing thing. And
if this conversation stood out to you, or you realized you need a little more laughter in your life, I don't want you to just pass it by. I just want you to take one small step, reach out to someone, reset where you need to be, and just breathe. And keep going. And maybe take a page from Jess and find a little humor in your everyday, even when things feel heavy, because sometimes that's exactly what you need to move forward. Reach out to someone in your life that makes you smile and laugh. And that's all we could ask of anyone. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye, Jess.